Agriculture will be one of the major anchors in our country, our non-oil sector, given its core role to assure food security, improve incomes, and create jobs, generate export earnings, and reduce food imports and catalyze value-added production. Those were the words of Dr. Ashni Singh, Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility of finance, as he unveiled a $383.1 billion budget that was presented under the theme, A Path to Recovery, Economic Dynamism, and Resilience. Thank you for joining us for another program of Budget in Focus. I'm your host, Travis Bruce, and at this time I'm joined by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Zulfikar Mustapha. Thank you so much for being here, Minister.
Let me thank you for inviting me on your program. I am happy to share our program with the public out there, and I hope that we can make a difference for this year and we'll continue the work that we started last year.
Yes, thank you. You know, Minister, but before we get into all the work with the agriculture sector, I wanted to take a trip back to Thursday when the President, Mr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, His Excellency, he made an address to the 12th Parliament, and he emphasized the watchword for governance of this country, that it should be partnership. So what are your thoughts really on that, and how do you see yourself playing a part to materialize this?
Well, since I have assumed the Ministry of Agriculture as minister there, I have started to work in that capacity in terms of farming partnership with farmers, with stakeholders, and that has been the watchword of this PPP civic government. We have a proud history in building partnership, in working collectively and ensuring that we have everyone to participate and come on board to be in the developmental trust of our country.
Yeah, thanks for that. You know, and one of the things before we get into this year, because I know there are quite a lot of activities that will be rolled out by the Ministry of Agriculture, I want you to share with us from that emergency budget last year. I know it was specifically to help the economy, put it back on its feet. So tell us a bit about some of the initiatives and programs that really happened last year.
So last year, I could safely say that when we took over this sector, we took over a sector that when we went in there were many persons what we found were hopelessness. The sector lacks leadership and lacks a direction that the agriculture sector was supposed to go into. And we started our work, and we started very meticulously. First of all, we started a number of outreaches to diagnose what are happening or what were the issues in the Ministry of Agriculture. We were able to, and as you rightly said, that His Excellency would have talked or speak last Thursday on building partnership. We start to build that partnership from the day one, since when I assumed that role as Minister of Agriculture, with the various stakeholders. If you traverse across this country now, people will tell you that they see hope. They see their future in the agriculture sector. Because prior to August of last year, when you raise an issue about development in the country, everyone were pointing you to the direction of island gas, that we have to wait for the island gas revenue to come on stream. Today, that has changed drastically. People are now saying, and just now I heard you made some quote from Dr. Singh's presentation in his budget speech. Yeah. Now people are seeing a future in the agriculture sector. Agriculture is back on the front burner in our country, because the kind of work that we have done last year, we have seen a renewed interest in the agriculture sector. Because what we have done, we found dilapidated structure, we found clogged canals, we found impassable dams and other infrastructure. And we set about to repair it, because in last year's emergency budget, we would have had $18.5 billion that was allocated in this sector. Of course, before we have expended a cent from that sum, almost 50% or 55% of that sum were already expended by the previous administration. And we didn't see any major work that were done in this sector. But as I said, we started out and we went across the country. We met with the farmers, we listened to their concern, we listened to their problems, and we took them on board, and we start meticulously to work in various areas across the country. In the rice industry, sugar, and we can talk about sugar later on, sugar, other crops, all the other areas, the livestock industry and things like that. So we formed this partnership, and now when you look around in the agriculture sector, you are seeing more and more people who would have called it a day before August now are coming back into the agriculture sector because they see a future in agriculture. They see the investment that we have been making in the sector. They see the kind of work that we have put in, the rehabilitation that we have started. For example, the major scheme, the main scheme in this country, the largest agriculture scheme, the MMA scheme. Farmers complain when I started my outreach in that area. Farmers complain that they will, first of all, the small amount of crop that they had, they will be unable to reap it because the infrastructure there was in a dilapidated state. What we have done, we expended close to $90 million as an emergency fund to do all the canals, do the dams, and do the NI structure. Today, if you go in that area, almost all the canals there are in tip-top shape. The dams are, you can drive through the dams, you can move very quickly from the road to the dams, to the back dam. So these infrastructure we are putting in place, and all across the country, all across the country. I went to Crabwood Creek, I went to the Pomeroon, I went to Buxton, Nabakalis, Victoria, Belladrum. So I've been right here in Mocha on the east bank of Demerara. So I've been going across and getting this kind of response from the farmers. It's tremendous, and it shows how this sector can create food security for us, not only in Guyana, but in the Caribbean, where we can bring in much needed revenue into this country through the agriculture sector. As you rightly said, that agriculture is the way to go. And we are now moving rapidly and aggressively to pursue this dream for Guyana to be once again the breadbasket of the Caribbean, or the agriculture powerhouse for the Caribbean. And I am thinking that we can achieve that in a few years from now, as long the groundwork is there, and we are moving, as I said, rapidly, and I am having the kind of cooperation, and the president, the vice president, and all my cabinet colleagues have been giving me the kind of cooperation to move this sector forward.
Yeah, thanks for that. It really paints everything into perspective
Right.
of what the Agriculture Ministry has been up to from its genesis since this government has been in power.
Right, that's it.
And, you know, we talked a lot about that, but this year we are going to see $22.6 billion pumped into the Ministry of Agriculture. So what are some of those programs that we can expect for this year?
So I just to mention this, the state that we found the sector last year and the work that we have done over time for that short 5-6 months, we have now seen that the agriculture sector is making a contribution of 27.1% as in the non-oil, gas, and sector commodities into the GDP of our country. 27.1% contribution to our GDP, right? Non-oil and gas commodities. And then we're talking about 21.3% export of non-oil and gas commodities. So the agriculture sector is making a lot of, bringing a lot of revenue, and also making a lot of contribution towards the country GDP. As you rightly said, we now will be enjoying a $22.6 billion in the agriculture sector. That show a 23% over last year allocation. And I was looking, because I have to prepare for my budget presentation too. We have seen from 2015 the decline in spending in the agriculture sector over that last 5 years. And immediately upon assumption to office by this PPP civic government, we have seen that from 18.5 to 22.6 immediately. The increase started once again. So we will have $2 billion for the sugar industry. This will take us to $9 billion within 6 months to the sugar industry. What we found in the industry, that the 3 operating estates that we have, Highflot, Blairmont, and Albion, they need critical capital works. The previous administration would have neglected these works. And as a result of that, these estates were limping along. As a matter of fact, the capacity of these estates were between 50 to 60%. Now with these funds, we are hoping that by the end of this out of crop, that critical capital work would have been executed in these these factories, so that we can have better performing factories, so that we can have more juice being extracted from the sugarcane. And things like the boilers, things like the rollers, the chain carriers, those things, major works were neglected, right? And because of that, you had critical downtimes in the factory. And cane is a product. When you cut the cane, the faster you can crush it is better for more sucrose, so that you can get better, more juice. But when you leave it for a period of time, then it starts to deteriorate. And we have seen that over the last few years. And we have seen a decline in production. Last year, as a result of that, Gaisuco was able to produce only 88,000 tons, the lowest production ever in the history of this country. I am hoping that we can increase that this year. The projection is 97,000 tons. Also, what we are doing with the $9 billion that we'll be getting now, the first tranche was 3, then the second tranche was 4, and now we have this $2 billion. We are reopening it. We made a commitment in the campaign that we'll reopen the closed sugar estate. As we are speaking here today, I am very happy to report that works are going on aggressively to reopen these estates. As a matter of fact, those 7,500 sugar workers who would have lost their job, we have already re-employed almost 1,000 of those workers. And over the next few months, we'll have more employment being take place at these estates. Now, Gaisuco has a timetable, and Gaisuco is working towards some factories or some estates will start operation latter part next year, so while some will go to the other year. But we are also considering not only government must get these operations back, but we are looking at private-public partnership too, so that we can get these estates run more efficiently. As Minister of Agriculture, I would like to see the cost of production down, and the first aim is to break even. You know, at presently, Gaisuco is selling sugar less than what they are producing. So the first objective for me is to ensure that we come at a break-even point, and then later on we look at profitability. And how we can come to a break-even point, we have to ensure that we spend money to develop these estates. When we mean rehabilitate these estates, not only the factories, but we also have to do works in the field to increase the yields per hectares, so that we can have more canes being produced. As it stands now, Gaisuco yields is about, our Gaisuco ratoons is about 12 to 13 years. You know, that means for the last 12 years they didn't do replanting. So the cane keep growing out year after year. And a time will come when they have to meet a saturation point.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that we are getting low sucrose too from the cane. So all these things taken into consideration, and with the infrastructural work that have been lacking over the years, for example, the dams to take the canes to the factory, the pond fleet, all these things has been deteriorated over the years. And as a result of that, we have the poor performance of Gaisuco. I just want to make this last point on sugar, because sugar is a wide
Yeah,
thing.
it is.
In 2016, yes, when the coalition would have present their budget in 2016, they boasted how they have turned around the sugar industry. Because in 2016, we have seen almost 38,000 tons alone came from Skeldon Estate. And they said how they turned around the industry. But that was the work that came about because of the work we did when we were in government prior to 2015, right? And they reaped the benefit, but they didn't continue the investment that we started to ensure that we rehabilitate these factories. We keep it on a par so that it can work efficiently. And that's the reason we see the decline. And today we are only producing just about 88,000 tons. And I'm hoping that that will increase tremendously over the next few years.
Yeah.
Turning to, and it's mentioned both the president when he spoke at Parliament last Thursday and in the speech of the Minister of Finance, Dr. Singh, they said about when you want to develop the agriculture sector, you have to ensure that you take care of the DNI system. And we have seen a record allocation in this sector. $12 billion have been allocated for the DNI sector. And this will do critical works in terms of continue where we left off last year in terms of continue to do rehabilitation, continue to do new DNI structures, continue to do the dams so that people can have proper access to their farms, to their cultivation within these areas. Last year, we would have purchased 12 new pumps. As I'm speaking here, we have the Indian technician. They are in the country setting these pumps, different parts of the country in Region 2, Region 3, right here in Region 4, Region 5, Region 6. All these areas will have new pumps, or pumps to boost the drainage system in our country. Right in Georgetown, we have placed 3 additional pumps to help in the draining Georgetown, because over the last few months or last few years, we have seen high intensity of rainfall. Our drainage system is not geared to drain this amount of water fast enough. That is why in many areas you tend to get flooding for a period of time. I want to let NDIA work to ensure over time we can have the capacity to drain the land very quickly. And also this will help us in the agriculture sector, because when we have flood in the agriculture area, when people crops are being flooded out, when people livestock are flooded out and they die, people suffer tremendously. We from the government also, normally our resources is be stretched to help these people go back into these sectors. So we'll be having these pumps will boost the drainage system. We'll do a number of rehabilitation with other drainage structures around the country so that we can have a 24-hour drainage system. That is my objective in the long run, that these main agriculture area must have a 24-hour drainage system. That means when the tide is low and where we have sluices, we'll use the sluice to drain, and when the tide is up back, we'll use the pump to pump the water so that we can have drainage constantly and continue drainage so that we can drain the water quickly. This year, we'll be seeing pump station being constructed at Adventure and the Quarantine. Blackbush Polder is an area they have close to about 18,000 acres of rice land. Then you have another 10 to 12,000 acres of cash crop, other crops. Then you have a lot of livestock up in Blackbush Polder. So it's one of the major agriculture schemes in our country too. So we see over time Blackbush Polder is very prone to flooding. So we'll be placing a new pumping station at Adventure on the Quarantine, so that Blackbush Polder will have 3 pumping stations to drain them, to complement the drainage with the sluices that they have there in those areas. So we'll have construct a new sluice at Blackbush Polder. We'll have a Montrose also, Montrose on the East Coast. Yeah. Over the last few months, we have seen flooding on the East Coast. That because the pump at Montrose is in a bad state. So we'll be constructing a new pumping station also this year at Montrose here so that we can take care of the drainage system there. And this area alone will drain close to about 54,000 acres of farmlands. When I went to the Pomeroon a few weeks back, I made a commitment there to the farmers that the Pomeroon, the Pomeroon were flooded for a number of weeks. The Prime Minister and myself went there at charity. We didn't get to go to the Pomeroon, but I went to the Pomeroon a few weeks back. We took help to the farmers in the form of fertilizers, pesticide, chemicals, and planting material. And I made a commitment that I will put in this year's budget a pontoon and two excavators for the Pomeroon. These pieces of equipment with the pontoon will be dedicated directly to the Pomeroon. That will be a permanent feature in the Pomeroon. And I'm very happy to report today that the Ministry of Finance have approved that. And this year, hopefully by the end of this year, we can have that pontoon and the two excavator um, for the Pomeroon area there. So farmers in the Pomeroon can have drainage, because I have made a commitment also to do block drainage in the Pomeroon. You know what is block drainage? For example, if you got 3, 4, 5, 6 farmers living around the area, you do one drainage system for those set of farmers. So
Okay.
I'm trying to encourage those kinds of block drainage in these areas so that farmers can have relief, because in these areas, these areas are prone to flooding, and we are getting these problems on a continual basis. So we can't do piecemeal work now. We have to do work that will ensure that we sustain it, and we do work to farmers can enjoy these benefits in the long term rather than do short term work.
Yeah.
So we have $12 billion, and we'll see continue to do work in the DNI, the NDIE, in all these areas. We'll continue to do these works, to do maintenance, to do new structures, to put on new pumps. Because if we want to open up new lands, then we have to ensure that we have proper drainage facility. And that is what we are trying to do, to ensure that we have those things. Last year, we have seen a record-breaking production in rice. We have seen 1.2 million metric ton of rice last year. And we have seen almost $51 billion that rice production have raked into our country, the contribution towards our revenue. This year, we will be expended $1.3 billion in the rice sector. And what we are doing that, we are looking, because there are some issues around the country where rice farmers, whenever they want to dry their paddy, they go on the roadside. And many times motorists are complaining, people in the communities are complaining that these things are a hazard to traffic. So what I'm now promoting as Minister of Agriculture, I am working with the farmers to build these drying floors at different points in the community, so that rather than farmers go on the public road to dry their paddy, they will go to these drying floors. So we have a number, 6 new drying floors we'll be constructing this year in regions 2, 3, 5, and 6. Those are predominantly the rice producing area, the rice growing areas. We already have some drying floors in these areas, and we'll complement and boost it up, so we'll have more drying facilities for farmers, so that they will go on less and less on the public road. Eventually, in the long run, we can have drying floors in all the areas, so that farmers can have these facilities to dry their paddy rather than going on the public road and pose a danger and hazard to traffic. So we have $1.3 billion allocated to the rice sector. We'll also have a soil laboratory. That is very important for us. What we did late last year, in October last year, we would have launched a new variety of rice in this country. Now we have moved rice production from about 30 to 35 bags per acres. With this new variety now has the potential of moving it from 30 to 35 bags to 55 to 60 bags per acres. That new variety, you call it the GRDB16. Now farmers are using it. Some of them already use it in the last crop, and they have had good result. Many of them, the crop improved, as I said, from 35 to 55 to 60 bags per acre. That is a tremendous increase. That is a high-yielding variety that we have launched. And we will continue to do research to launch new varieties that are can take the resistance that we have here in terms of the pests, the disease that normally affect these rice. We are continuing doing these kinds of research. Now, what we are also have to do, we have to have a proper lab to test the soil, so that we can know what nutrition the soil need, so that we can help farmers to prepare their soil, prepare their cultivation, so that they will have proper when a result when they reap their crop, high yielding, they'll have more paddy and things like that. So we are having more demands now for our rice, because right now as I am speaking here, our quota to Brazil have increased from 10 to 34,000 tons. We have new market in Hungary and Latvia, a Baltic Republic, the former Soviet Baltic Republic. And we have to supply our present market. We are having more demands for our paddy. So my objective is to increase production over time. In another 5 years, we must double production what we reaped last year. 1.2 million ton, we must increase it to 2.4. That means we have to open up new lands. And what I have been doing, and as I said, I have been getting the support. This year, we'll start work on the second phase of the MMA scheme. We'll see almost about 90,000 acres of new land being opened up there. Over time, you'll have almost 200 acres when that project is completed. Then we are looking at the quarantine to do a new all-weather road, which will open up a lot of land there, over 10, 20,000 new acres of new lands will be opened up there. So that means if we open up new lands, we build in these infrastructure, we'll have more production in terms of rice and other crops. So normally we'll see more production coming on stream.
Yeah. You know, Minister, if I may, I know there are a lot of activities that you plan for this year, and that's not even half of the list.
Right.
But you mentioned, you know, well, let's going back to Gaisuco with that $2 billion. We need to also highlight the creation of jobs, and that is an important factor.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That, you know, jobs are being created. And you mentioned also on that research, we want to talk a little bit about NARI, because they are going to be receiving 1.2 billion to support
I will just let me go through. But let's talk a little, as you rightly said, about Gaisuco. I agree with you, fully agree with you, that Gaisuco, we must look at Gaisuco not only as Gaisuco to produce raw brown sugar, but Gaisuco, we have to look at the all-round role that Gaisuco plays in our country. Yes, sugar production is one of the main activity, but Gaisuco, as I said, Gaisuco play a very important role in terms of the village economy. You have a number of persons, because when these estates were closed, the entire village economy died at sudden death. A number of families were displaced because people had to move and go find jobs at other places. Then the DNI services that Gaisuco normally extend to those communities, the government had to take it over. The recreational facility, like the community centers, the sporting facilities that Gaisuco used to maintain, were left abandoned or hand back to given to the region, or the government had to spend money and take care of that. The primary health care in the community that Gaisuco normally provides had to be taken over by the government. So not only when people seeing Gaisuco talking about sugar, and people like the AFC and especially Mr. Ramjetan, who shadow my ministry in the parliament, talk about sugar, we wasting money. This is not wasting money, because when General Motors in America had this crisis, when we were going through the financial crisis, President Obama had to put money in the to keep it alive and ensure that he keep the job there, right? Just also in the agriculture sector, we have seen how much subsidies that were given to the agriculture sector in the United States when you had issues there. So Gaisuco is providing jobs, and Gaisuco is providing a number of services for various communities across the country, especially the village economy, and a number of persons who indirectly depend on Gaisuco, the market vendors, the shopkeepers, the seamstress, the taxi drivers. All those persons earn a living when these workers in the community work at Gaisuco, because the money is become disposable earnings spent in the communities, right? So that's, I want to talk about Gaisuco. But Gaisuco, as I said, we will continue to move Gaisuco forward. We will continue to ensure that Gaisuco play its role, and we will also ensure that Gaisuco turn around, not only to produce raw brown sugar, but to diversify, do value-added production, things like refined sugar,
Yeah.
ethanol, do increase the output of molasses, increase the grade of the molasses, and other things like that. So we are seeing a whole host of programs that we plan for Gaisuco, and hopefully Gaisuco will make that turnaround. Will make that turnaround, and then the naysayers and the soothsayers will be silent,
Yeah.
right?
And so what about agro-processing? I know there is going to be $832 million that will be pumped into agricultural infrastructure. This includes packaging and processing facilities. What does this mean for the average person that might be packaging? Can they benefit directly from these facilities? How will it really roll out?
Well, normally agro-processing done normally do in Georgetown. So
Okay.
we want to ensure that we move the facilities across the country. This year we are looking at in Region 9. We are looking to develop the Parika one in Region 3 and also in Region 10. We are also looking in Les Beholden, Blackbush Pool, I just mentioned it.
Yeah.
So all these areas will have agro-processing facilities. And we will assist the farmers to ensure that we help them in the agro-processing facility. The crops will become more, our produce will become more value added now. And we are providing that service, and we'll continue to help the farmers to do that. As a matter of fact, we are looking also to do one at Hope on the and in Region 4 here, because you got a number of farmers in Region 5 there can come at Hope. We are also looking at markets to find markets for these farmers. So whilst we are helping them and we are giving them the service in agro-processing, we are helping them to get more value added in the crops. We are also looking at markets at various parts, various areas. I am now looking at all the barriers in the Caribbean that are affecting our producing going to these Caribbean countries. You know, over the last, I was looking at the importation bill in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean have been importing between 8 to 12 billion US dollar annually in agriculture produce. We can tap into that market. We can tap in, and we have good produce. And as you rightly said, in the agro-processing facility, the new GMC now we have revamped the policy of the new GMC. The new GMC is more proactive. This year alone, what we will be doing, we will be purchasing 2 new freezing trucks that will facilitate farmers to get their produce to various parts. For example, if a farmer in Parika, we can find market for a farmer in Parika, then we can facilitate that farmer with our truck from Parika to transport their produce to Georgetown, right? And at a minimal cost. At a minimal cost. At Nari, as you rightly said, at Nari, we have $1.2 billion allocated to Nari. Nari has to play a very important role, because Nari will not only concentrate now on the traditional crops. What we'll be doing, Nari will also concentrate on the non-traditional crops. And when I talk about non-traditional crops, I mean big crops, things like soya, things like corn. Over the year, every year annually, we are importing corn to the tune about 25 million US dollars for the poultry industry. My job, and the president has made it clear in his speech and various speeches, that he wants us to produce all the corn and all the proteins for the poultry industry right here in Guyana, right? And we are working at that. This year alone, we have $500 million that is earmarked for the intermediate savanna, where we'll be working to help get farmers to invest in corn and soya production. And we'll be helping facilitating farmers. So now I am working out. I have a small committee working on this with a plan, and we are having some potential person who wants to go there and invest. I'll be working with Lands and Survey very closely to facilitate these farmers so that they can go there and start production. So next year, hopefully, when we'll do this interview once again, we'll say that we're producing all our corns and soya right here in Guyana.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of lands in the savannas, and it has potential for large-scale production. We already have a farmer there who is doing a large-scale production, and we'll continue to work with farmers to do that. Also, another sector that we see a big investment in the livestock sector. You know, we have $806 million allocated to the livestock sector. The livestock sector has to play a very important role in our country. For example, meat production. We are self-sufficient, but what we are doing also, We are looking to develop the livestock sector, especially the poultry sector, the beef sector, the swine sector, so that we can also export these things. Right in here, our neighbors, Brazil, is exporting beef to the Middle East. We already had business group from the Middle East and various parts of the world coming to Guyana to meet with us to look at various aspects of which sector they want to invest in. And the agriculture sector is one of the sectors that many persons are focusing on,
Yeah.
especially that group that came from Dubai. We did 3, 4 presentations. We did presentation in rice production, poultry, goat, the Gaisuco, and we are looking also to build world-class arbiters. Like we're doing one at Anvawak in Region 5. We're doing a swine arbiter at Garden of Eden right here on the east bank of Demerara. And we want to ensure that these are world-class facilities so that we can have the facility to export these things to various parts of the country, right? And we'll continue to expand in the livestock sector, because the livestock sector is a very important sector for us as a people to create employment and also to bring in much needed revenue into our country.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think the agriculture sector this year, I think I am very pleased with the allocation, and I think that this is a start of the transformation in the sector that we'll see over the next 5 years. Also in the fishery sectors, the fishery sector, we'll be seeing much needed investment. For example, we'll concentrate a lot this year on aquaculture. Aquaculture is very important for us, and we'll have $293 million that is allocated in the aquaculture sector. Not so long ago, the president have already said that very shortly he will launch himself the aquaculture master plan, so that we can get the aquaculture organized. Aquaculture has potential to bring in much needed revenue into our country, create jobs, and create opportunities for the small people, the poor people, the small farmers. You know, we had these shrimp farmers around the areas around the country. They are not organized.
Yeah.
So what I have instructed the fishery department, that we must register these people, get them organized, and start work with them. We are really expending more money in the Saturday aquaculture farm there at Manripo, so that can be a model farm, and also we can provide the fingerling for the farmers who need these things, so that we can and give them the kind of necessary technical advice so that they can develop the aquaculture sector.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, that we have the $500 million in supportive infrastructure for the intermediate savannas, that will continue to do investment there in these non-traditional crops that we want to do. We'll also look at cattle rearing. We'll also look at aquaculture in those areas too. Inland fishing. In the marine fishing, we'll continue. Last year we purchased a vessel, and this year we'll purchase more equipment that are needed in the vessel, so that we can patrol our exclusive economic zone. We can also patrol to look at pirate sea that are affecting our fisher folks. You know, that's a serious problem. And we'll be looking at only this morning I made a visit to the wharf at Meadowbank there to meet with farmers, to listen to fishermen, to listen to their views there. And they need help. I will continue to work with them. We'll continue to develop this sector. As a matter of fact, almost 15 to 20,000 people are engaged in the fishery sector in our country, that they are getting a job from. So we have to continue to invest in this sector to ensure that we create the necessary facility so that our fisher folks and fishermen can enjoy these and continue to operate. That is the cheapest form of proteins for our people in this country.
Yeah, you know, Minister, as we're coming down to program time, there's quite a lot that the Agriculture Ministry will be up to this year and even beyond. And I really do know that you will definitely execute and achieve all these goals. But I see that coconut is becoming the frontier crop in Guyana. So can we expect coconut facilities, perhaps harvesting byproducts of coconuts for the regional and international market? What can we expect? A factory specifically for that crop?
So what we'll be doing this year, last year we have already we constructed 2 new nurseries one in Karuni and the East Bank here, the highway, and one in Charity and the Escubo. We'll do another, this year we'll do another 4 coconut nurseries at Bekanam, Legwan, Canal, Polders, and number 63 on the quarantine. I am doing this because what I have noticed that coconut will be the third most important crop for our country.
Yeah.
Coconut is taking the world by storm now. And as you rightly said, that the byproduct of coconut can be used for many things. So what I have done, I have since written to the Sri Lankan to help us, to give us technical advice. Also, I have written to the international coconut community to help us in some technical advice and some technical export to Guyana to help us to improve our coconut production. The private coconut farmers also will be working with them too to ensure that they continue to expand their production. And we are working with Cardi and Nari and the Hope Coconut Estate to help farmers not only to plant coconut as a crop, but to do intercropping. You know, intercropping is a very important activity. Because if you plant a coconut for 18 months or say 24 months or 36 months, whatever the period, now between between the planting period and you're waiting for the growth of the coconut, then you could do other crops, intercropping at the between the coconut plant. We already have some of those farms on the highway,
Okay.
right? And I am encouraging those farms. So the intercropping system, we are now enlightening farmers. We are advising them on how to they can do it, and many farmers are coming on board. So the coconut industry will play a very vital role. The coconut industry will be expanded over the next few years, and we can see a lot of coconut coming out of Guyana, and we can export it because we have to take advantage also of the opportunities that exist not only in the Caribbean and Guyana but in North America, in the North American market. There's a big market there for coconut water. And when you go into North America and go in some Caribbean stores, you'll see coconut water coming from Vietnam, coming from Thailand and those Asian countries. We are right here at the backyard. We can do that, fall into that. So I'm looking to so our farmers can take the advantage, and we will help to facilitate these markets and help them, as you rightly said, with not only the agro-processing, but help them to get their coconut water bottle in a proper way. Only yesterday I've had discussion with a person who can create these labels for produce coming out of Guyana at a very cheap cost. So all in all, we are bringing everything together. So you could see now that in the agriculture sector, we have a vibrant plan where we want to execute.
Yeah.
Right? We have a plan where we want to execute, and we know where we want to go. We know where we want to take this country, where we want agriculture to take this country. And I feel very optimistic that in another 4 years, 5 years from now, agriculture will be the number one sector in this country.
Yeah, and with that, I think we've come to the end. So that is wonderfully said, and I know that agriculture will really take Guyana where we need to go. It will push us in that road towards progress, towards development of the country, and we need to definitely focus on these non-oil sectors, and you are doing a fine job, Minister Zulfikar. So at that time, we want to thank you, our listeners and our viewers, for being with us right here on another program of Budget in Focus.
Thank you.